You know, there's a strange paradox woven into the fabric of human life, something we rarely acknowledge because it hides in plain sight. We move through the world assuming we understand the people around us, assuming they see us, value us, appreciate the silent weight we carry. But what if I told you that for most of your life, you have been participating in a quiet illusion, an illusion that convinces you that giving endlessly is the same thing as being loved? What if the version of you that everyone knows isn't the real you, but the one you maintain just to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to stay useful in a system that extracts more than it ever returns? It's a sobering thought, almost uncomfortable. And yet beneath that discomfort lies a truth you've felt for years, a truth that whispers every time you sit alone at night, a truth that rises in your chest when you feel drained, used, stretched thin. Something is wrong and you've allowed it for far too long. Imagine this for a moment. Your entire life, people have approached you with the same subtle expectation: be who I need you to be, not who you truly are, not who you're becoming, not the vast uncharted landscape of consciousness inside you. No, they want the version of you that benefits them, the helpful one, the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who says yes more easily than breathing. And the years pass almost imperceptibly, and somewhere along the way you forget that you ever had the right to say no. You forget that your energy was yours. You forget that you existed before the world taught you to serve it. And here's where the real tragedy begins. You don't even notice the theft happening. Nobody steals your soul with a grand gesture. They do it with small requests, tiny obligations, emotional hooks disguised as affection. And one day you find yourself looking into the mirror at a face you recognize but a life you don't. When did you become the person who exists only to hold others together? When did your joy become negotiable? When did your boundaries dissolve into the background noise of someone else's expectations? Let me offer you a difficult question, one that requires brutal honesty. When was the last time you did something entirely for yourself? Not out of obligation, not out of responsibility, not because someone needed you, but because you wanted it, because it nourished you, fed you, revived you. When, if you have to pause to remember, then somewhere along the way you stopped mattering to yourself. Humans are peculiar creatures. We love to imagine ourselves as independent, sovereign beings carving out our own destiny. But in truth, most people are shaped like clay by the hands of their families, their partners, their social circles. You were trained slowly, consistently, subtly, to make yourself responsible for the emotional weather of everyone around you. Their storm became your storm. Their chaos became your responsibility. Their mistakes became your burden. You didn't volunteer for this role. It was assigned to you, and you accepted it because you didn't know you could refuse. But here's the problem. The world will take everything from you as long as you keep offering. People will drain your energy while calling you selfless. They will consume your time while praising your loyalty. They will use you like a well that never runs dry, never stopping to wonder what happens when the water finally goes. You know the truth. They never ask if you're tired. They never ask what's weighing on your heart. They assume your service is natural, automatic, endless, and they only notice you when you stop. Until then, they treat your generosity like gravity, unquestioned, invisible, essential. I want to show you something. Picture yourself walking through a forest. You carry your own backpack, your worries, your dreams, your responsibilities, heavy but manageable. And then someone approaches telling you they're struggling. They hand you their pack. You're kind, so you take it. Another person comes, same story, same request. Then another. Soon your back bends, your legs shake, and the others stroll past effortlessly, free from weight, free from accountability, free to live while you strain just to stay upright. And if you dare to question it, if you dare to say, this is too heavy, they respond not with gratitude but with anger. How could you? Don't you care? Don't you love me? It's a manipulation so elegant you barely register it. Love becomes a leash. Responsibility becomes a trap. Kindness becomes a weapon used against the very person offering it. And here is the cosmic punchline: you think you're helping them, but you're not. You're enabling them. You're allowing grown adults to remain children. You're shielding people from the consequences of their own choices. You're playing the role of savior in a story you never agreed to be part of. But something in you is waking up now. You're beginning to recognize the pattern. You're beginning to feel the exhaustion, not just physically but spiritually, an exhaustion that comes from living as a character in someone else's narrative. You were meant to be the author of your own story, yet all your pages have been filled with tasks, expectations, favors, and emotional debts that were never yours to carry. Humans often misunderstand the nature of boundaries. They think a boundary is an act of hostility, a declaration of war, a sign of selfishness. But in truth, boundaries are acts of profound love. Love for yourself, love for your peace, love for the finite miracle of your time on this spinning planet. A boundary says, I exist, I matter, I am not endlessly available. A boundary says you're no longer willing to be broken open just so others may pour their problems into you. And yet, the moment you begin to reclaim your space, the moment you start to say no, notice what happens. The people who truly love you adjust. They might be surprised, but they respect it. They understand. But the others, the ones who benefited from your silence, your compliance, your exhaustion, they panic. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. Because the moment you step out of the role they assigned you, they lose control. These are the people who mask their demands as emergencies. They create crises out of thin air to keep you close. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, you feel the faint pulse of your true self, waking up beneath all the roles you've played. This awakening is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, steady, undeniable, like light slipping beneath a door. And this is only the beginning. And when you finally begin to realize that life is not an obstacle course, but a grand hallucination of your own participation, something shifts inside you, a subtle but irreversible widening of perception. You start seeing that every moment has been quietly offering you a door, but you were too occupied with running to notice it. The universe never hid its pathways. It's just that you were too tangled in fear, too married to your illusions, too convinced that chaos meant catastrophe. But chaos is simply the raw material of creation. It is the clay out of which your destiny is sculpted. And once you stop fighting it, something astonishing happens. Life stops resisting you back. You begin to sense that this entire reality is an intelligent ecosystem responding to your state of awareness. When you're anxious, everything narrows. When you're open, everything expands. When you're fearful, the world compresses around you like a tightening fist. But when you lean into curiosity, when you dare to walk toward the unknown instead of away from it, existence unfolds like a vast blooming flower, revealing patterns you couldn't see before. This is not metaphor. This is the architecture of consciousness. The external world rearranges itself according to the internal frequency you emit, and slowly the things you once chased begin gravitating toward you. Opportunities that seem distant begin to orbit your presence. People who resonate with your evolution appear suddenly, as though summoned by some cosmic magnet. It's not magic, it's alignment. You are no longer swimming against the current. You have become the current. You have stepped out of the frantic timeline created by panic and into the deeper rhythm that guides all living things. The rhythm that whispers rather than shouts. It feels like remembering something ancient, something buried in the marrow of your being long before language. A soft knowing emerges that you were never meant to move through life like a trapped animal, compressing yourself into shapes that please others. You were designed to expand, to explore the boundaries of consciousness, to walk with a sense of astonishment through the corridors of your own becoming. And when you hold that truth gently in your hands, your entire relationship with existence transforms. you start understanding that every challenge was placed deliberately, not as punishment, but as initiation. Life wasn't trying to break you, it was trying to sculpt you. It wasn't trying to test your worth. It was trying to carve out the space required for your strength to emerge. Storm didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. And as this realization settles into the center of your awareness, you begin to see your past differently. Not as a chain dragging behind you, but as a set of stepping stones that carried you closer to clarity. The world becomes less threatening and more like a vast interactive dream, where meaning is generated not by what happens, but by how you participate. This recognition dissolves fear. Not because life becomes easy, but because you start sensing that you were built for complexity. You were engineered to navigate uncertainty, to ride the spiraling waves of transformation, to dance at the edge of the unknown without retreating into the tiny shelter of familiarity. Safety might feel comfortable, but it never made anyone conscious. Awakening is forged in your willingness to meet the mystery with open eyes. And eventually you stop seeking permission. Permission to rest, permission to grow, permission to change, permission to be who you truly are beneath the layers of conditioning. You discover that the only authority you ever needed was the quiet compass inside you, the one that always pointed toward expansion but was drowned out by the noise of fear. When you start listening to it, truly listening, life begins to respond in ways that border on the miraculous. Synchronicities multiply, intuitions sharpen. What once appeared as coincidence now reveals itself as communication. You realize you are not separate from the intelligence of the universe. You are one expression of it. You are not an intruder in existence. You are a participant in its unfolding. The thoughts you think ripple into the infinite, shaping reality in ways you may never fully understand but deeply feel. Your emotions are not random, they are signals. Your desires are not mistakes, they are invitations. Your dreams are not fantasies, they are blueprints. All of this becomes startlingly clear when you stop forcing life and begin collaborating with it. You begin to notice that the more honest you become with yourself, the more the world rearranges itself in your favor. Honesty is not merely moral, it is evolutionary. It allows your reality to align with who you truly are instead of who you pretend to be. Pretending fractures the psyche, authenticity unifies it. And from that unity emerges a kind of inner power that doesn't need validation, applause, or acceptance. It is quiet but unshakable. It moves through you like an underground river, carving out new dimensions of possibility. And as this inner coherence strengthens, you notice the disappearance of a longtime companion, resistance. Resistance used to grip your mind like a vice, tightening whenever you tried to act, speak, or change. But now it loosens, not because you defeated it, but because you no longer energize it. Resistance feeds on fear. When fear dissolves, resistance starves. You no longer hesitate to speak truths that once felt too heavy for your tongue. You no longer shrink yourself to comfort others. You begin to stand in your life with a sense of rootedness that is not aggressive but undeniable. From this state, your past loses its ability to haunt you. You see that you were never broken, just buried. You were never lost, just misaligned. You were never weak, just conditioned to believe in your smallness. And slowly the false layers fall away. You stop trying to be impressive. You stop trying to meet expectations that were never yours to carry. You stop trying to outrun shadows that were never meant to be enemies. Instead, you turn toward yourself with curiosity rather than judgment, with compassion rather than shame, and you find that your darkness was only ever the doorway to expansion. This shift radiates outward in strange and beautiful ways. You start noticing colors more deeply, conversations become richer, silence becomes a sanctuary instead of a threat. Ordinary moments glow with a kind of metaphysical significance. as though existence is constantly winking at you, saying, you finally remembered. And in this remembering, you reclaim something powerful, the right to live from your center instead of your fear. You start showing up to life not as a survivor of your story, but as the author of it. You stop seeing the future as a battleground and start seeing it as a canvas. You no longer wait for permission to step into your potential. You become the permission. And with every step, the universe echoes your movement with subtle confirmations, aligning people, places, and possibilities like constellations forming a coherent shape in the sky. This is the moment where transformation stops being an idea and becomes an experience. Not dramatic, not explosive, but steady, grounded, and undeniably real. You feel the shift in your bones, you feel the expansion in your breath, you feel the rising of a self that no longer hides behind excuses or delays, it's becoming. And as you move deeper into this new terrain, something extraordinary unfolds, not outside you, but within you, an unmistakable recognition that the life you were chasing was always waiting for you to stop running, to turn around, to open your hands, and to finally receive what was already yours. And it is in that quiet moment of receiving, when the noise of your old self finally fades into the distance, that you realize the universe was never withholding anything from you. It was waiting for you to become someone who could hold what you were asking for without breaking under its weight. You begin to understand that transformation is not an event. It's a slow unfurling, a patient blooming that happens when you finally stop negotiating with your potential and start embodying it. Every hesitation you once carried begins to dissolve, not through effort, but through awareness. You're not pushing anymore. You're allowing, and as this allowing deepens, a fascinating phenomenon unfolds. The world starts mirroring your inner state with eerie precision. Suddenly, conversations become aligned with your growth. People who once drained your energy begin to fade from your orbit, making space for individuals who elevate your frequency rather than diminish it. It feels orchestrated, almost scripted, as though the universe was simply waiting for a signal from you, a willingness to rise, before rearranging everything around you. This is the physics of consciousness in motion, the unseen architecture that builds your reality, one intention at a time. Your perception widens. You start noticing patterns that were invisible to you for years. You see how every choice, every reaction, every belief you carried was shaping the very shape of your world. It becomes impossible to play the victim, not because suffering disappears, but because you finally see its mechanics. Life does not happen to you. It communicates with you. It pushes when you resist. It opens when you soften. It expands when you trust. And this realization hits you with such intensity that it becomes impossible to go back to sleep. You begin to feel the power of alignment in your bones. It's not about controlling life. Control was always an illusion. It's about learning how to move with the current of existence instead of drowning in the waves you created yourself. And when you move with that current, everything feels strangely fluid. Decisions become clearer, opportunities become louder, intuition becomes sharper. You stop second-guessing yourself because you finally understand that hesitation was the echo of a self that no longer exists. This new awareness doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger. You stop being intimidated by uncertainty because uncertainty is no longer a threat. It's an invitation, an open door to a version of you that you haven't yet met, a version shaped not by fear, but by possibility. And as you step into that uncertainty, something incredible happens. You stop collapsing under pressure. Instead, you expand. You spread out into the space life gives you, filling it with presence rather than panic. Your inner narrative shifts. Gone are the days when you told yourself stories of limitation, of insufficiency, of doubt. You begin to construct new internal architecture, thoughts that support the self you are growing into rather than the one you are outgrowing. You start speaking to yourself with a kind of reverence because you finally understand the power your words have on the fabric of reality. Self-talk becomes spell work. Intention becomes design. Desire becomes direction. And as this inner restructuring continues, you feel a new form of courage rising in you, not the loud performative kind, but the quiet, unwavering courage of someone who has finally befriended their own consciousness. You no longer seek validation because you no longer perform for an audience that lives outside you. Your focus turns inward, and from that inwardness emerges an authenticity so raw, so unfiltered, so undeniably real that people feel it before you speak a single word. This authenticity becomes a beacon. It draws toward you experiences that are aligned with your true nature, not the version of you that once existed to please, to survive, or to shrink. You begin living a life that feels like it belongs to you, not inherited, not adopted, not borrowed from society, but grown from within. A life that matches the frequency of your soul rather than the expectations of the world. And in this alignment, creativity awakens. Ideas begin to flow not as random sparks, but as streams of consciousness that feel guided, almost delivered. You begin to access parts of your mind that were dormant for years: intuition, vision, imagination, insight. It feels as though a secret library inside you has suddenly become unlocked, revealing knowledge you never consciously studied, but somehow always knew. It is the intelligence of the universe speaking through you, using your awareness as a channel, your presence as a vessel. You start understanding that you were never meant to merely exist. You were meant to create, evolve, transform, influence. Your life is not a sentence. It is a sentence you are writing, one word at a time. And when you take ownership of the pen, life stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like a canvas. You stop fearing mistakes, because mistakes are simply the strokes that give your masterpiece depth. You stop fearing failure because failure is simply the universe showing you another way to become yourself. This shift in identity creates an extraordinary ripple effect. You stop tolerating what drains your soul, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You no longer cling to relationships that suffocate your growth. You no longer participate in conversations that shrink your vision. You no longer bend yourself into uncomfortable shapes just to be tolerated by people who have no idea who you are becoming. You begin choosing your environment with intention because you finally understand vibrational hygiene, the truth that your surroundings shape your evolution. And with this clarity comes another revelation. Solitude is not loneliness. It is recalibration. It is the sacred chamber where you hear the voice of your own consciousness without interference. You begin to cherish solitude because it reconnects you to the source of your own power. You stop running from silence because silence is where the universe speaks in its most articulate form. From this space of inner clarity, something profound begins to unfold. You start trusting yourself, not blindly, not recklessly, but deeply. You trust your instincts. You trust your timing. You trust your evolution. You trust your unfolding even when you cannot see where it is leading. This trust becomes an anchor in the storm, a compass in the dark, a torch in the labyrinth of your own becoming. And as you walk with this trust, life begins to reveal layers of meaning that were invisible to your old self. Every interaction becomes a lesson. Every moment becomes a message. Every obstacle becomes a mirror. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this trying to show me? That single shift in perspective turns suffering into wisdom, chaos into clarity, and confusion into transformation. You become someone who moves through the world with a sense of inevitability, not arrogance, but alignment. You no longer wonder whether you are capable, you know you are. You no longer question whether you deserve good things. You understand that deserving was never the issue. Readiness was. And now you are ready in a way you have never been before. Ready to speak without shrinking. Ready to act without hesitating. Ready to step into the version of yourself that life has been sculpting beneath the noise of your doubt. This readiness radiates outward in a way that is almost magnetic. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. The universe feels it. And everything begins to recalibrate around your new state of being. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your relationship to it. You stopped acting from fear and started responding from awareness. You stopped clinging to the past and began moving from presence. You stopped fragmenting yourself and began unifying your consciousness. And in that unity, a new chapter quietly begins, one that is not defined by survival, but by creation. One that is not shaped by fear, but by intention. One that does not repeat the patterns of your past, but births the possibilities of your future. And from that moment onward, you begin walking through life with an awareness that doesn't announce itself loudly, but moves through you like a secret current humming beneath your ribs. You feel it when you breathe. You feel it when you make decisions. You feel it when you stand at the threshold of a moment that would have once paralyzed you with doubt. The hesitation that once lived in your bones no longer commands the same authority. It becomes a faint echo, a ghost of a version of you that no longer holds dominion over your destiny. You have stepped into a new architecture of being, one built not from fear, but from presence. And as this presence deepens, you begin noticing a strange and beautiful phenomenon. You are no longer reacting to life. You are participating in it. You are co-creating with it. You are shaping the very fabric of your experience through the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment. You feel less like a passenger and more like a navigator, not because you control everything, but because you finally understand the difference between control and alignment. Control was the cage. Alignment is the key. You start tuning into the frequency of your own becoming. It feels like a signal you had been too noisy to hear before, a vibration that was always there beneath the surface but drowned out by the static of your old identity. And now that the noise has quieted, clarity rises like dawn across the horizon of your awareness. You start seeing not just what is happening, but why it is happening. You understand the movement of your life, as if you're watching a constellation form in real time. With this clarity comes an unexpected sensation, peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on circumstances being perfect, but the kind of peace that emerges when you stop resisting the movement of your own evolution. A peace that comes from knowing that everything you once feared, everything you once avoided, everything you once hid from, was never sent to destroy you. It was sent to awaken you. It was sent to shape the version of yourself capable of stepping into the very life you thought you weren't ready for. You begin to feel a profound gratitude for your journey, not because it was easy, but because it carved you into someone capable of seeing the world with new eyes. The pain that once felt meaningless begins to reveal its architecture. Every heartbreak becomes a doorway. Every failure becomes a compass. Every loss becomes a kind of cosmic redirection. You see how life was sculpting you even when you felt shattered, how it was preparing you even when you felt abandoned, how it was guiding you even when you felt lost. This awareness gives rise to compassion, first toward yourself, then toward others. You see how many people are still trapped in battles you've already fought, still imprisoned in illusions you've already dissolved, still living inside stories that no longer define you. And instead of judging them, you feel a kind of tenderness rise within you. You understand how hard it is to awaken in a world that profits from your unconsciousness. You understand how difficult it is to break patterns that have shaped your identity since childhood. You understand that everyone is moving at the pace their soul can tolerate. And from this compassion grows a quiet strength. You become someone who doesn't need to prove anything, defend anything, or impress anyone. Your worth becomes inherent, unshakable, not negotiable. It is no longer an external currency you chase, but an internal truth you embody. This inner worth allows you to move through life without the heaviness of old insecurities. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop forcing yourself into experiences that suffocate your spirit. You begin choosing with intention rather than fear. This shift ripples outward into every area of your existence. The choices you make become bolder. The dreams you allow yourself to consider become larger. You stop approaching life with a survival mindset and begin approaching it with a creator's mindset. You stop asking, how do I avoid failing, and begin asking, what am I capable of building? And this single shift opens pathways you never knew existed. You start walking into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with awareness, not with superiority, but with grounding. You carry a sense of inner gravity that draws the right people toward you and repels the ones whose presence would distort your alignment. It's not intentional, it's energetic. You are no longer available for experiences that diminish you. You are no longer compatible with the frequencies you once tolerated. Evolution creates its own boundaries. The world begins reflecting this evolution back to you. Doors open that once felt sealed shut. Conversations arise that feel guided. Opportunities emerge that align with your deeper trajectory rather than your previous limitations. You feel the universe responding to you in real time, as though life has been waiting for this version of you to show up. Not the version shaped by fear, but the version shaped by awareness. Not the version trying to survive, but the version learning to create. And as you step further into this new alignment, you begin to see the extraordinary truth. Beneath everything you've experienced, you were never as broken as you believed. You were never as lost as you feared. You were never as small as you were taught to feel. You were simply unawakened to the vastness within you. You were living from the surface of your being, unaware that the depth of who you are stretches into dimensions beyond the reach of fear. This realization becomes the foundation of an entirely new way of living. You stop searching for yourself in the world because you finally understand that your identity does not exist out there. It rises from within. You stop seeking external markers of success because they pale in comparison to the richness of inner coherence. You stop needing constant reassurance because your sense of direction no longer depends on the approval of anyone outside your own consciousness. And finally, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly, you step into the truth you have been orbiting your entire life. That you are not a prisoner of circumstance, but a participant of creation. You are not defined by what has happened to you, but by what you choose to become next. You are not an accident of the universe, but a deliberate expression of it. And when this awareness finally integrates into your being, something extraordinary occurs. You stop running, you stop hiding, you stop fighting yourself, you begin to move through the world with a kind of inner luminosity that cannot be faked, taught, or manufactured. It is the glow of someone who has confronted their shadows and emerged with their light intact. It is the aura of someone who has died to their old identity and been reborn into the vastness of their true self. It is the presence of someone who no longer walks through life seeking meaning because they have finally become the meaning. And this quiet, radiant awakening is the moment your life ceases to be a series of reactions and becomes a deliberate unfolding. You become the architect of your destiny, the sculptor of your consciousness, the poet of your own becoming. You begin to speak, act, and live from a place of truth so deep that it resonates through every dimension of your existence. And in that final realization, the realization that you were never separated from your path, only sleeping on it, you awaken fully to the vast and astonishing truth that the universe was never outside you. It was always moving through you, waiting patiently for the day you would open your eyes. and recognize that you were not merely surviving this world, you were becoming it.